Welcome to Trash Talk, a podcast by Zero Waste Canada. I'm your host, Alistair McCallum. I moved to Canada in 2017 from England, and I've since held a variety of roles in the waste industry, and currently sit on the Zero Waste Canada board. On this podcast, we will dive deep into the world of zero waste and the circular economy, speaking with change makers who are helping to lead us to a more waste-free, sustainable planet. Okay, Trash Talk is back. We have Ray with us. I'll let you introduce yourself, Ray, your background, and then, how you came to be at Waste Solutions.
Absolutely. So I originally started off at the University of Guelph doing my environmental science degree. I think most people that end up in the waste industry don't really intend to go there. It kind of ended up being, you make your way in there and then it turns out you just love it. And very similar story for me. So as part of my co-op program at university, I was actually in the ecology program. So not waste, more ecosystem science. And one of my placements was with the Region of Peel, where I traveled to schools educating students about waste and recycling and touring the MRF facility in Mississauga. And that experience really solidified my interest in waste, and everything just seemed to click. And it really paired well with, my passions back when I was younger in high school. And so then during university, I actually highlighted Waste Solutions in a project as a company doing meaningful work in this space. And then fast forward to graduation, they had an opening on their national accounts team as kind of like a representative, customer care, a bit of account management. And so then in January 2020, I started working at Waste Solutions with large clients, property managers, mostly retail and property management portfolios that were spread across Canada. And so every day was a bit of a new challenge. Missed pickups, service changes, the odd dumpster fire would actually end up in there, which was quite interesting. As well as plenty of sustainability questions just due to the nature of who our client base was at the national level. And so that role really gave me a strong foundation in understanding the operational side of waste. But with my background in environmental science and sustainability, I really found myself working more with that team and gravitating towards that end of the business. So in January 2023, I moved into my current role as the manager of sustainability data and reporting at Waste Solutions. And now I lead a team of 5 really amazing analysts, and we prepare monthly, quarterly, and yearly waste diversion reports for clients, which help them understand just how much waste they're generating, but as what's going into that and how they can do better. And beyond reporting, we support those clients with signage, education, and full scope consulting, anywhere from setting targets to building long-term waste diversion roadmaps. And I mean, typically my day-to-day is a mix of team leadership, problem solving, client strategy, and data. I love a good spreadsheet. I love data. So it's a good fit for me. And the impact we're making, really helping businesses shift from waste management to waste reduction, has been really satisfying.
Awesome. Just going back to what you first said about getting into waste to like kind of falling into it and all means to be in it. Like, similar to myself, I moved over from the UK and then got a job on Craigslist, looking in bins, and then fast forward 8 years, I'm now making podcasts on waste. So it's kind of kind of funny, like you kind of fall into it and stay in it, which is similar to myself. Awesome, yeah. So maybe just give some background to Waste Solutions as a company as well, kind of like what the model is, like what you kind of like do as a company wide, and what kind of clients you're working with.
Absolutely. So at Waste Solutions, we work with a wide range of clients across Canada, small companies to medium and large organizations with multi-site operations, many sites, 100 plus. So that's kind of all over the map. That includes national retailers, property management companies, shopping centers, food service businesses, healthcare providers, long-term care properties. It's pretty extensive and all over the place. So we've got our hands in all the different baskets, I guess, but we're an independent managed service provider, which means we don't haul the waste ourselves. We don't have trucks on the roads, but we manage it on behalf of our clients to drive cost savings, sustainability improvements, and better service outcomes. And so some of our clients are household names with hundreds of locations coast to coast. Some have one small little shop in a small town or in a city center, and they really rely on us to oversee everything from vendor negotiations and invoice audits to sensor technology and compliance reporting. We help them optimize their waste programs by holding vendors accountable, working with those vendors on their behalf, just to drive down administrative costs on their side. Um, and then using data to identify inefficiencies, providing tailored solutions, whether it's through smart sensor installations, waste audits, or building full diversion roadmaps, or simply just cost savings. We really are there for what they need in that particular time. And we're also experienced in helping clients like meet ESG goals and align with standards like LEED, BOMA, and GRES. So while the types of waste we manage might vary, general waste, haz waste, cardboard organics, the basic core three, and then
Yeah.
expanding past there to even grease traps and cooking oil, and again, haz waste. The through line is always kind of the same, which is that we provide unbiased oversight, credible data, and real impact for clients looking to modernize their waste and recycling operations, and also just maybe take it off their plate as something
Yeah.
they need help with, and they don't really have the expertise or the time to do so themselves.
Awesome. Yeah. So it's pretty much taking like the pain points away from clients that could come across in their waste programs and managing it kind of for them, and yeah, being that kind of one-stop shop for all those different elements that could add up to being issues for clients. You're kind of managing it all for them and helping them look at ways to improve their programs as well, which is awesome. Yeah. So let's kind of focus on kind of diversion data piece, your kind of data there you were saying earlier. So why is that so important for clients these days? And kind of what things are you doing to help clients see diversion rates increase?
Yeah. I mean, every industry pretty much relies on data to understand what's working, what's not, where to improve. And I think waste is like no exception to that. Diversion rates are the metric everyone tends to focus on, and they're important. And I know that's typically our baseline, what we report on, but they are just one piece of the puzzle.
Mm,
Depending on a client's goals, we might also look into things like contamination rate, capture rate, waste intensity, or even greenhouse gas impacts tied to their disposal. The real value is having multiple data points so you can get a really well-rounded view of your environmental impact. At Waste Solutions, we provide diversion reporting as a standard offering, like I said, but clients that are more engaged in their sustainability journey, we really try and layer in those other metrics and we encourage that. I would say the best example of this is, you might have a fantastic diversion rate for the type of industry you're in. You could have 80% diversion, let's say. But if you're producing an insane amount of material and there's so much coming out of your facility, it's not necessarily the best metric to track
mm,
how environmentally efficient your business is because you may be high in diversion, but that's still a lot of material that's putting pressure on the systems that have to manage it later. And so we're also seeing a growing demand for this kind of data, even in industries where reporting isn't mandated. So largely because society and stakeholders are expecting transparency. People want the businesses that they shop at to be environmentally conscious. There's a lot of pressure for that. And so, it might not be something where, again, they're not government mandated to report these numbers, but you're starting to see an interest in it. And even the people that are starting to run these companies and start them up and be in upper level management are more passionate than I think probably leadership has been in the past years. So that's really
mm,
interesting to see too. So whether it's whether it's internal ESG targets or external frameworks like GRES, Leader, BOMA, BEST, companies really want like credible, current, and easy to access data. And so one way we do this, we offer our reports in many different formats. My team takes a lot of pride on being able to pivot and customize their reports to whatever the client needs. If they need it in a specific spreadsheet format, we do that. If they love a visual dashboard with lots of graphs so they can really, they might be visual people and they want to present it at their team meetings, we can build that as well. But we do have a platform called Waste Metrics. That's kind of our internally developed system where we track all this stuff and we all of our invoices flow through and we do financials, but it also is our sustainability online waste portal. And so it gives clients direct access to their waste and recycling data as well as their financials. And they
Mm.
can log in and see everything from diversion rates to GHG metrics to cost on a site level, and as well as see a stream breakdown on a site level. They can benchmark across properties and flag underperformers and actually make decisions based on up-to-date information, which, what sets us apart is our focus on that data. I mean, I'm biased because I love numbers, I love data, so
Yeah.
I'll always say that, but we don't just manage the waste, we make sure the clients have a really clear, accurate, and timely information so that they can make those informed decisions about their environmental performance and how they want to change and what goals they want to set.
Amazing. Yeah. Yeah. When clients kind of like see the online dashboard, what's their reaction to having all this kind of data they can then use to action, waste improvements? What's the kind of like feedback you get from them when you present
Mm-hmm.
all these different metrics?
I think similar to what we mentioned before, waste can be like an overwhelming topic for a lot of um, business owners and companies in general. So
Yeah.
I think just the having it all in one place is one of their favorite things in a really digestible, easy format, as well as the fact that we use estimates on our end that can help standardize the data so that they're not, it's all in one place, but it's also all you can compare it apples to apples. And so that's been a big, um, I guess, success point or piece of feedback we get from our clients is they like that they can look at their 50 properties across Canada and they know that even if there's different haulers, they know that when we're saying, hey, this site's doing really well and this site's, at the bottom, that it's truly a comparison because the data is standardized through that system. And so they can make those informed decisions. And I think the way that the online portal displays the data can really help show what's going on versus having a whole bunch of reports from 50 different sources from your different locations and trying to put it all in maybe like a clunky spreadsheet and you're trying to understand what you can do to either save costs or just be a bit more environmentally conscious.
Yeah.
It really allows for that. And I think the feedback has been great so far. And I mean, feedback on our normal reporting on a daily basis, anyways, has also been really positive. And I think the fact that we are able to really customize to what our clients need is one of our best features. And we like to think that's what the clients want. So
Yeah. That's great to hear. Yeah. I'm just curious too, you mentioned you can like filter by site. Do you find any clients gamify that in some way to like, have like different sites compete?
I can't say I have that perspective because we haven't dug into that with clients, but I would say
Yeah.
I hope that's kind of what that's doing is
Yeah.
giving them that incentive to use that ranking and understanding how their sites compare to each other to really target the sites that need help the most. We've done educational work at sites where we have said like you should gamify this. You should put in some incentives for either the staff to get more involved, through green teams at work or for the people, that are transient coming through this space, to gamify it for them. And I know what the thing that always comes to mind for me is that technology Oscar, I believe you interviewed the AI intuitive representative there. And I always
Yeah.
think of Oscar because it is kind of a way of gamifying waste in a way. And I think like that's a really strategic, fun way to get people thinking about it more. But in terms of like gamifying of our portal, I'd love to hear back from our clients to know if they do that. I don't think I've ever asked that question, but that is, I think, kind of the intention is that they do take that and they action on it and they, do incentive programs or really focus on those sites that need the most help and the most work. And then they can really use that as between their properties if they're connected in that way.
Yeah, there's a paper that came out that I read recently as like people like that were like looking to recycle household items had a chance of winning I think $100, whatever it was, and that
Mhm.
incentive that made them, yeah, think about recycling more items versus not having that incentive made them, yeah, do more and
Hmm.
bring more items for recycling. Yeah, so that's just why I brought that up. I just thought it was a yeah kind of cool way to yeah make waste more fun, and we're seeing that more and more I think in the industry now of like yeah how to incentivize people to yeah to do the right thing, which is yeah can be tough sometimes. Yeah, so. Yeah, kind of coming on to the data piece again. You mentioned earlier on of how using smart sensors. I'm a huge fan of tech in waste and how like helps bring waste into a more modern era. Can you talk more about, what innovations you're involved in, like the smart tech you're using? How is that helping your clients with their programs? And what kind of future innovations are you seeing?
Big question. I'll start with sensors um, and how Waste Solutions utilizes them, and then I'll
Yeah,
move into technology in general. But
yeah, great.
um, I know for us, we use ultrasonic as well as camera sensors. So I always describe to clients ultrasonic, acting like echolocation. That's how it puts out a frequency and the signal comes back on how full your bin is. And we'll put those on clients' bins strategically to understand bin fullness, to understand if we can, change the size of the bin and optimize that, if we can change the service frequency, because
Mm,
most haulers, and I don't want to say all, some haulers have fantastic data and some haulers have pretty like basic level data, and that can come from just they're assuming a bin fullness of 100%, 80%, x amount. And if your bin's actually not that full, you could be getting data that's saying you're producing so much more waste or volume than you truly are.
yeah,
And so bin sensors can really help from an operational standpoint in lowering costs in terms of reducing pickups. If your bin's consistently at 50%, you can cut your lifts in half usually as long as it works operationally. And we work with clients to make sure that's a good fit. You could potentially reduce your lifts in half and cut your costs there.
mm,
But not only that, it also means your bins are fuller when they're being serviced. And so the numbers that you're being given by your hauler or through us are more accurate. And in the case of us managing sensors, we can see, the flow of, hey, your bin's at 46% before it's being lifted. And then the next day it's at 86%. Maybe you switch the service days to be more in line with the flow of material coming out of your facility.
yeah,
Um, my team specifically uses sensors to use this bin fullness to apply it to our estimate calculations of how much weight is being produced. And so we've had some really great results from that where the diversion amount from what they were getting from their previous haulers diversion reports before is so different than what our numbers are produced now, because we've applied a standard weight that we use in just like for all of our clients, and we've taken the sensor data and said, okay, like this lift is actually only 46%, and this one's 96%, and this one's 65%, and converting that as like or applying that into the calculation as their volume, and then they're getting a lot more of an accurate depiction of what their data is looking like month to month, and then they're able to make a lot more informed decisions on where they want to target to improve, or just whether from an environmental standpoint and operations they get a lot more insight from that. And I think the sensors have been something that my teams love to incorporate into the data. Um,
yeah,
but I mean, in terms of tech overall, I think it's kind of finally catching up in the waste industry. It's really changing the game for how waste programs are managed and how businesses manage and optimize and measure their data. Um, like I said, we're already kind of integrating this tech into many of our clients' programs. Both with the ultrasonic and the camera sensors. The camera sensors too can show you a lot of contamination. So we actually had one example um, at a school where there were soccer balls and books in their garbage bin, and we were able to communicate to them like the next day, and they were able to remove that material. And then in another case, they were able to talk to their staff and make sure that those were going to donations or to, a free library program, things like that. And so that was really useful. And that's something I don't think you would have had unless you had someone looking into the bins every day that was really nosy and wanted to tell you what was going on.
Yeah.
But beyond that, we do internally, there's just what we do internally. There's a wave of innovation happening across the industry, I think both in Canada and around the world. One of the most exciting developments is the rise of AI powered waste audit and sorting tech. I know AI can be, depending on who you ask, it's scary, it's amazing, it's all the things. But there is a company out of Quebec, so a Canadian company called Waste Robotics that I personally am following, and I like what they're doing. And it's developing robotic arms that use computer vision and deep learning to identify and sort materials like plastic film, cardboard, and metals on a conveyor belt at MRF facilities with incredible precision. And these robots can process and sort waste faster, safer, and more accurately than traditional manual methods, helping facilities increase recovery rates and, reduce contamination. And having visited these MRFs and seeing, people in action doing that work, if you can increase um, capture at that part of the whole waste chain, I think that's very valuable, especially for the end market of those materials and just the ability for the facilities to bail and sell that material. If it's cleaner, they're going to be able to use a lot more of that, and therefore more is recycled. Um, and then on the international front, there's companies like Grey Parrot in the UK that are rolling out camera-based AI systems that monitor the composition of waste in real time at material recovery facilities. And their system can identify, I think, like over 100 types of materials and quantify contamination and even flag branded packaging to support producer responsibility programs, which I think will be interesting to see if that becomes adopted in Canada as EPR kind of rolls out,
Mm.
becomes, ingrained in the system. And then, truck mounted cameras are another growing trend. Companies like AMCS and I think it's Lixo, I don't know if that's correct, are using like AI enabled video systems on collection trucks. We see that along Canada already, but they detect overfilled bins or contamination at the curb that can feed data directly into client dashboards. And I know that's being used in municipal systems, which typically there's not a lot of there's not a lot of data there. So that's really interesting. And I think just in general, all this tech is giving us a more accurate, timely, and actionable insights than ever before. And it's not just, it can reduce costs. That's a benefit, but also just enabling smarter data-driven decisions and improve environmental performance.
Yeah.
Globally, I think countries with stronger circular economies and policies like the EU are pushing this tech pretty fast. Here in Canada, the general sense, at least from my opinion, is that we're seeing the momentum build, especially with innovators like waste robotics and policies like EPR kind of coming into effect. Um, I know it's here in BC, EPR is already kind of established. In Ontario, it's underway as well as many other provinces. But the future of waste management is pretty, I'd say it's intelligent, automated, and measurable. And that's where the industry needs to go.
Yeah, yeah, great to hear that. Yeah, just going back quickly to the smart sensors, just for audience context. The old-fashioned way is that yeah, bins aren't typically weighed, so they're assumed to be full when they're emptied. And what you're saying is with the fill level detection, you can then add that layer on top of the old-fashioned methods to get better data for clients, which is great because yeah, like the old-fashioned methods were kind of yeah guesswork. So having that kind of insight on how full bins are really gives that yeah like huge improvement to what was currently in place with the old-fashioned yeah collection methods. We now have yeah better data collected based on that yeah landfill level detection, which is good to hear. And yeah, like tech in waste, yeah, it's cool to see innovations coming more and more. You mentioned a lot there. I wondered kind of what would you like to see happen in Canada to, help move these things along to bigger scales than they are currently.
Yeah, I mean, I think EPR is going to play a huge role in that. I think anything that's policy related, anything that is requiring companies to report data um, is always going to have a big impact. I think the environment and I guess waste as part of that is not always top of mind for everyone. And so sometimes you do need these these rules that basically you have to do this in order for it to progress in any way. I think extended producer responsibility is going to make a lot of companies, a lot of producers, let's say, tackle with how they're producing, like what the materials are that they're making their products out of, because they are ultimately going to have to be going to pay for those at
Mm,
their end point. So I think there's going to be a lot of thought into that. I think there's going to be a lot of innovation around the composition of packaging and as you would hope, I would hope. I'm not an expert on any of this, but I would hope that that would drive some change into the technology in some of these facilities and also driving better facilities in more rural areas. You know,
mm,
Canada is pretty condensed in its cities. And I think as a general rule, you see people assume that, you know, when there's a plastic recycling symbol on the bottom of a cup, let's say, or some sort of package or container, that it's going to be recycled if they put it in their blue bin or take it to the recycling depot. But that's not always the case because different municipalities, different areas around Canada, they have different infrastructure to support um, the processing of those materials. And so, you know, even if a person does their best and they reduce their waste as much as possible and anything they recycle, they're cleaning it and they're doing everything perfect in order for it to be recycled, doesn't mean it's necessarily going to because the infrastructure may not support that. If a city is hiring a hauler to pick up all the waste around a town, and the closest facility to be able to manage a specific type of material or plastic is hours away,
yeah.
they may not send it there. And so it's not a good use of the money that's funding that portion of operations in the city. Um, so I'd love to see some of these policies drive better infrastructure, and I'd like to see some of the sounds bad, but some of the fines that come from the EPR go back into these systems to
Mm.
really boost them up and make organics more accessible and recycling more accessible across the country for everyone.
Yeah, good points. Yeah, I think like it's always a cost issue for the most part. So like with cost shifting to producers, yeah, will we see more investment from them in infrastructure to bring costs down? That's an interesting point. Yeah, there's opportunity is there, I would say, just that it's not at the scale it needs to be for zero waste points of view, for example. There's a lot of good companies doing great things out there. Maybe like right now it's not the scale it needs to be to really make a like huge dent like collectively in diversion across the country. But it's hopefully we'll get to a zero waste Canada phase soon. But yeah, there's a lot of things
Dream.
that happen before then. But yeah, there's good steps being taken. But yeah, overall there's opportunity for improvement all across the country. But yeah, there's good things happening. Just maybe a bit slower and maybe it's not happening at the scale it needs to be right now. But yeah, we'll see what happens. Last question. So what's the one thing you would want to remove completely from the face of the earth that you see on cameras, for example, or even in bins anywhere? Like what's the one thing you're like, right, this item is or everywhere, it's in the wrong bin all the time. What would you like to eliminate completely?
That's a tough question because I think I think my personal philosophy on it is that it may cost money, but there's always a way to reuse material. There's always going to
Mm,
be something you can make up out of, um, the product.
yeah,
I think I think something with the biggest impact is not one specific material, but just construction and demolition material in general. I
yeah,
think digging into some of those mixed construction and demolition bins can have a lot of resources that can be reused, a lot of raw materials that have no business going into a landfill, but because of how labor intensive it is to manage those materials, there's a lot of them that go into the landfill. And I think that would be the one area I would love to see change. Not necessarily go
yeah,
away. There's no one material because again, you can make something out of anything. But I think I think if Canada and Canadians in general invested in businesses that had better development practices and if there is more rules around renovations and how that material is handled, and if there was investment into companies that used a lot of these materials that are coming from renovations or demolitions, I think that would be incredibly valuable. It's a huge amount of material that I think gets kind of forgotten. I think waste and the environment and its connection can really be put on an individual such as you or me,
yeah,
to deal with in our own homes. But when we're talking about like an entire mall being demolished, where is all that material going? And yes, obviously that's being tracked in some way. You'd hope by those companies, but can that go to better options? Can that be more environmentally friendly? And can those materials um, be repurposed and reutilized in a circular form more? I'd love to see that happen more.
yeah, yeah. Fair comment. There's a lot of resources that could be, yeah, reused in construction for sure, and it's hard to track. It's not always regulated, but yeah, it's hard to track what is and isn't going into construction bins and where it's being taken to. So yeah, fair points.
Mm-hmm.
Mine is coffee cups, for two reasons. I don't drink coffee. I'm a tea drinker. First of all, and then yeah, like there's a lot of confusion on them. So like they go in blue bins in some places, don't in other places. Like I think Vancouver, when I was living there, it was like you go into the office and they go into garbage. At home, they go into the blue bin. So it's like, where does it go? It just causes confusion. And I think we're past the point now where there needs to be, yeah, more reuse programs like there was in Vancouver for a time, the cup fee and everything, which got taken away. So I think we're, yeah, past the point now of, needing constant coffee cups. So I think there's, yeah, opportunity there for producers to invest in reuse, and yeah, just people to, look at reuse options as well and bring your own mug. So yeah, anyway, that's mine for yeah, a couple of reasons there. But um,
That's a good one. I think honestly, there's a lot of reusable programs going on. I think they're really ramping up, and there's a lot of usership going on. And then COVID happened, and a lot of these
yeah,
programs had to be taken away and scaled back. So hopefully, I mean, I don't know any of the numbers or data on it, but I'm assuming some of these are back in place. I would hope that eventually gets to a place where it's higher than what it was before, and it becomes kind of the standard. You see malls doing that now, where they're not doing single use materials in their food courts. And
yeah,
in a perfect world, that's where we all go to. And hopefully there's never an unrecyclable coffee cup in the recycling again. Um, but I mean, a note on that, it kind of also goes back to the infrastructure and facilities. They're not necessarily unrecyclable. It's just whether it's labor intensive or
mhm.
the facility doesn't have the ability to based on what kind of machinery they have. Maybe someday that changes, but and hopefully it does. So have to see, but that's a good one.
Yeah, there's options available. Like I was saying before, yeah, the scale isn't quite there yet, but I think we're on a path to get there. But it takes, yeah, like
Mm-hmm.
collective action from producers and everyone. So one day we'll get there. But yeah, it's good to see that you mentioned, reuse companies. I had a few of them on the podcast as well. So there's options out there and they're growing all the time, it seems, which is good to see. Um, we're down to our last minute. So yeah, I'll end there. Thanks for your time, Ray. Great to speak to you and learn about what you're doing with Waste Solutions. So thanks again for joining the podcast and yeah, have a good weekend.
Yeah, thank you so much. Have a great weekend.